Hey guys, here are 20 Airbnb markets that are hot right now for the little guy. And if you're international, stick around because I'm going to give you something special. Even though these 20 markets are in the USA, there are 5 reasons why these markets are hot. Take one of these 5, whatever applies to you, and use my market research videos to find out if you have a hot local market too. These are hot local markets waiting to meet you. Subscribe today. And market category number 1 is the walkable water category. And you'd be surprised. The example that I'm giving you is absolutely South Florida. And you might go, Sean, wow, that place is full of banger expensive properties. How can the little guy get into Airbnb in South Florida? Well, let me introduce you to Delray Beach. I was just working with a student from Panama, and we're looking at different markets where she can invest, and we found some super pretty, quaint, very inexpensive properties to get into. You can even arbitrage them. That's how inexpensive this is. And the only requirement was that you in your photos show how close to the beach you are. There are many a property near the water in South Florida, yes. And in some of the most popular areas like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach maybe, it's going to be tough to get close to the water. But what most people don't realize is there's plenty of gorgeous beaches between Port St. Lucie and Miami. Tons of markets, including areas outside of West Palm Beach like Jupiter, Singer Island, Lantana even. There's some cool stuff over there. Now, there are more markets in the walkable water category. You can go over to St. Petersburg, Florida, even down towards Naples. You're going to find some stuff along the way. And we can keep going all across the coastline, all the way up to maybe even Mobile, Alabama, Biloxi, Mississippi, and even the coastline of the Carolinas. I don't want to spoil number 2 for you just yet because we can go West Coast as a prime example of number 2. If you want to make money on Airbnb with almost no money in your pocket, go to an area that is supply dry. San Diego is a perfect example. There's just not enough property where people want to go. And yes, that's the expensive side. And there's some pretty beaches. You can mix number 1 and number 2 in San Diego. If you really want a killer example of number 2, go to Jersey, next to New York, Jersey, because New York essentially has banned Airbnb, meaning anybody who wants to stay in an Airbnb near New York, say that 5 times fast, near New York, you're going to have to go across the water to Hoboken, Jersey City area. And what I found with my students is as long as you have, say, 5 beds, it could be a studio apartment, a basement apartment with 5 beds, and you'll make $300 or $400 a night. Because the supply constraint, the lack of supply, and the need for all those beds leads to the acceptance of lack of quality. So if you inherited a property or just got your hands on kind of anything, as long as you met the bed count, you would make absolute money. You don't have to be good at this. That's what I really love about supply dry opportunities. Because number 1, being near the beach, that is a great lever to say, hey, you're going to love to stay here, just park your car and walk, but you still have to make the place look pretty. I have seen apartments in Jersey that look like they were out of the Saw movie make $400 a night. So not just the little guy, but maybe the inexperienced guy. Perfect for number 2. Number 3 is my favorite right now, I think. Gramacore. Yeah, I named that after music. That's a weird name. Don't unsubscribe for that. But the point of number 3 is that investors lost the plot, and you can take advantage of this. There's a very Globo Gym vibe in the investment space with Airbnb. Post-COVID, a lot of rich people came in and started investing. And they had this gluttonous, more amenities, more. More. But people don't necessarily want more. We have found product market fit matters. People find waste in having more than they need. And people assume that because something has more than they need, that it's too expensive and they can find a better deal with the stuff that's just right. Kind of like Goldilocks, you could say. And here in Texas, I'm finally giving up the ghost on this because my student is finally closing on the property that we're buying here in Lake Wonderful. Rockwall, White Rock Lake, and everything up there on the northeast side of Dallas, there are houses that are $1 million houses that are going half empty and are overpriced. But Grandma's house on the lake, people are booking. And Grandma's house doesn't have good photos. She doesn't have good furniture. She's got Grandma's furniture. But she has a picnic table outside in the yard, and she doesn't have a pool, and that's why she's booked. She's booked because she doesn't have the amenities that families do not want. If you're my age or older, I'm going to age myself here. So if you're 75 or older and you have kids, you remember what it's like to play in the mud, to get your knees a little dirty. And you want your kids to have a vacation that gives them the memories that you have because you're nostalgic, right? And so you're going to take them to a house that doesn't have a pool and you're going to have them swim in the lake. And the kids may protest, right? They may absolutely protest, but this is your plan. And because this is your plan, you decide not to book the house that has a pool or a hot tub, because then the kids would have an excuse, wouldn't they? Grandma's house phenomenon applies to way more than just Dallas, Fort Worth. You can look at any market that has a lake nearby a metro. We can go outside of San Antonio or Austin. We can go to Conroe near Houston in the Woodlands. Maybe even up in Wisconsin like Edgerton or Wisconsin Dells. I have students up there as well who experience this same phenomenon. Body of water where the kids can swim in the lake or the river, and no hot tub or pool will get you some bookings if you market to the right family demographics. Finally, we can spend less and make more money. And bonus round, some of these markets, home properties are pretty inexpensive. So this is an opportunity for you to buy a property without losing a kidney or 5 in order to make the deal work. And yes, that means that the little guy can buy a property and make some good money on Airbnb. Number 4, let me tell you a story. It's actually a lame name, but we're sticking with it because I have to make it sound right for the video. So please like the video, even though these names might be a little cliche. Brick story properties. What I mean by brick story is there are historical cities throughout the United States. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Boston, Chicago, Cleveland, Columbus even, anywhere in the Rust Belt, anywhere where we used to have manufacturing during the Industrial Revolution. And some of these historical buildings, we've even seen them in Houston, have a ton of charm. And then out of these cities that have these very charming old factory lofts and red brick properties, there are cities that have overinvested into hyper-contemporary high-rise gloss and chrome and glass. And Cleveland is a market, for example, where one of my students was talked into buying 9 or so high-rise apartments from an arbitrage player. And I said, don't do that. There's too many of those. They're ugly and there's hundreds of them. So you have to remodel these to make them pretty and you still have to compete with hundreds. Let's look at what actually makes money in Cleveland. And we found in the middle of winter, the dead of winter, this little red brick 2-bedroom property, super quaint but charming, fully booked at double the rate that anybody else was trying to get for a 2-bedroom property. Because it just looked so right. It looked very Airbnb. I have a student in Boston whose 2 bedrooms do about $500 a night because they're red brick. I have students in Milwaukee that are crushing it with this type of charm. I'm sure we could find some in Chicago, in Pittsburgh, and anywhere else where we've got this old antiquated crossover. And actually in Philadelphia, I profited off the very same move before I pulled out for that gang activity story that I told you about years ago. So find the old world properties that tell a story. And yeah, they might be a little distressed. You might have to do a value add play, but getting something that's distressed, you might be able to get it, even arbitrage it, because other people may not want the property because it's a little draft and it's not as updated. And if you think about living in a city, you care about what your friends think about you. So you want to get the nicer place. But if you're thinking about visiting a city that has a story, you want to stay in the older place because you're not going to go nightclubbing and try to convince some girl that you're a crypto millionaire living in a daft 2-bedroom red brick. You want the high rise with the glass. And please forgive the tangential nature of the point I just made, but there's something in here I would like you to put in your pocket. What it means to live in a city is completely different than what it means to visit a city. There are neighborhoods that you could not pay them to live because of the reputation of the neighborhood. And those are the very same places that people want to go for whatever reason. And that leads to a really cool opportunity where hotels would never build in those areas because whatever the reputation was, too sketchy to build. And this leads us to number 5, which is the hotel hollow. And hopefully I'll earn your follow with hotel hollow. I also call this the blitz method, something I teach my students to do, which is to go find neighborhoods that are up and coming. You know, at a phase of gentrification, you could say, and don't be mad at me, gentrification is a real inevitability and real estate investors do this, but a lot of times it's locals, good locals that reinvest in the neighborhoods that bring them up to speed. And if you think about Kensington in Philadelphia, or you think about East Downtown in Houston, or you think about Oak Cliff in Dallas, South End, North Carolina, for example, all of these places, and there's also some in Atlanta as well, all of these places, no one would build a hotel because it was dangerous, just not good investment back in the day. But then the urban nature of development, everything became too dense. And you can't build a building like that without doing something called an assemblage play, where you get a bunch of units together that you buy all the lots and then you sell that one larger lot to a developer for a huge, huge markup. There's a ton of money in assemblage, but it's a chore. And so because of this, it takes time for a hotel to get into these hot spots. You can barely find a hotel in Fishtown, Philadelphia as it is right now. So you have multiple years to get into these upcoming little neighborhoods where things are gentrifying, prices are still generally cheap, places are easier to rent because, landlords are having a hard time there, but the neighborhoods are coming to life where there's art and music and restaurants and hipster stuff and single origin coffee. My favorite. And you can print the money, absolutely print the money on Airbnb for years before hotels can catch up. And if I can give you one little nugget that you can take away forever, short-term rentals is not real estate. It is hospitality. So we have to be a little Muhammad Ali sometimes. You're going to get into a neighborhood, it's going to make money for a few years. And we have to be honest, if it's less good years later, we either ride it out with lower margins or we pack up like a gypsy and move our furniture somewhere else where it will make money. And there's nothing wrong with being a road warrior and moving city to city where you get the best margins. But there's also nothing wrong with scaling to 5,000 doors and selling for $2 billion like Sonder did. You can do that too. So if you want to learn Airbnb, like the back end stuff, not just what markets to get into, this channel does teach you all of the things. And thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. It's really good to have you guys here. I love teaching, so please let me keep teaching you. Subscribe or something. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.